Next up, we have Ann Hutchison from the Fort Collins Area Chamber of Commerce. To discuss transportation.
Good morning, good morning. Welcome to all of you. It is thrilling to see a full room and people that are so interested in issues that do impact all of us here in Northern Colorado. It's my great pleasure to moderate our transportation panel. For those of you that might be new to Northern Colorado, I do want to do just a 2-minute review of where we've been. So in 2015, the Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance had a retreat, and I still vividly remember the moment that the group was talking about issues that were coming up in the session and how do we make change and what should be our top priority. And I believe it was Carl Maxey who was on the board at the time, and he looked around the room and he said, you know what, at the end of the day, none of this matters if we don't fix that damn road. And he was talking about I-25. That became a singular voice and an entire vision for NCLA over the last 7 years. So immediately following that retreat, we set up what we call the Fix North I-25 Business Alliance. We began to share the vision of actually expanding North I-25 to 3 lanes from Fort Collins to Longmont in order to make sure that we remain viable as an economy and provide those resources that our folks in Denver really want and make it easier for them to get up here. And our government friends quickly jumped right in and were in alignment with us, and we saw the creation of the Fix North I-25 coalition. That was all of our government friends. And over the last 7 years, we have seen locals, regionals, state, federal folks, as well as business leaders coming together saying, yes, this is an important goal for us. Over that time, the project has grown from $1.2 billion solution to a $1.6 billion solution. And the great news is we have seen people investing in the expansion of this roadway, and we are now able to stand here today and say we have been successful in achieving the goal with the announcement last month by CDOT of full funding for the project from Fort Collins all the way to Longmont and an announced construction date. We still have a lot of lifting ahead of us, but we couldn't get to that point without all of you in this room and without our government friends also joining us. So hats off to all of you. We've done it. We achieved the goal, right? As noted, we do still have challenges in front of us. We have opportunities for what we call a public-private partnership to truly fund this roadway and others in our state. We've got additional work that's going to need to happen along the corridor. We need to start talking about regional roadways and how we connect. We also need to be talking as a state about how do we maintain this important interstate structure and system throughout the state of Colorado to keep communities connected. And helping us to understand a little bit more about that today, we have joining us Herman Stockinger, who is the Deputy Director of the Department of Transportation here in Colorado. As I did a little storytelling of the corridor work that we've been doing since 2015, we ended up working with 2 different governor administrations, 3 different CDOT executive directors. There's been one constant, and that's Herman. And we're incredibly fortunate to have him leading in the state and providing that consistency for us. So please join us here, Herman. Joining Herman then is Weld County, Colorado Senator Barb Kirkmeyer. She's been the tip of the spear for us advocating for improvements to North I-25 for almost 2 decades. As a Weld County Commissioner, Barb has chaired the North I-25 Coalition as well as the Upper MPO and continues to be an advocate for business. We are thrilled to also have Barb join us today.
Go for it.
All right. So we'll start off with a well-expected question, and each of you from the seat you sit in, your perspectives on North I-25, the progress and next steps.
Yep. Thanks. Good to be here. I appreciate the statement that I'm the constant. I'm feeling a little nostalgic because while I am on my 6th executive director, my first executive director is in the audience, Tom Norton, and have so much respect for him. And for those of you in northern Colorado that think that he's just a softie, he has a reputation for having a hard edge. And I remember he brought me in the policy and government relations office at CDOT, and I was our legislative liaison, and we had the former Senate President, Tom Norton, as our executive director. And my first session, I lost a pretty important bill. And you can imagine the lobbyists and folks down at the Capitol like, you have to tell Tom you lost that bill. And I was really scared. And to Tom's credit, I gave him a call. I said what happened. He said, go home, take it easy, have dinner with your family. If you want to talk about it in the morning, we can talk about it. Is this the guy that I was supposed to be scared of? But one thing that's brought me as I've stumbled my way into management at CDOT is care about the people. And that's something that Tom told me and taught me real early on. So it's really great to see him. Anyway, I-25 we're making great progress. I'll give you a couple of stats. Starting Fort Collins south from State Highway 14, segments 7 and 8, $600 million project. It'll be under construction through 2023. We think we'll be done early 2024. Segment 6, just south of that, $300 million project. That also will continue construction through 2023, open in 2024, along with 3 mobility hubs that'll be online in early 2024 too. So great progress. Still a lot of work to be done. We adopted in September our next iteration of the 10-year plan. So back in Tom Norton's days, we had the 7th pot. It's that those dollars that outside of the base budget, our federal gas tax, our state gas tax, is primarily used for maintaining the system that we have. We don't have a lot of dollars for new construction in that base budget, but those dollars that we do get for new construction, we usually put that in what we call a 10-year plan. And we just finished up our first 4 years of the 10-year plan, funded with certificates of participation. So we did COPs against state buildings in the state, and for 4 years, we were able to issue $500 million each of those years statewide. But then at the end of the 4-year plan, 4-year piece of the plan, we had another 6 years in the 10-year plan. We didn't have any money for funding that plan. So the fact that we were able to adopt a new 4-year iteration of the 10-year plan, it's funded at about $320 million a year, thanks to the federal IIJA, the new federal transportation and recovery bill, as well as Senate Bill 260 that increased the fees around the state. We have some dollars for projects like I-25. So segment 5 is funded at about $200 million in the 10-year plan. The rest of the dollars in what is expected to be about a $350 million project will come from the toll revenue that's being collected along I-25 and will be collected in segment 5. So we're excited that project is fully funded. With some luck, we'll be under design early next year and construction as early as the end of next year or beginning of the year after, 2024. So we're excited. We have good progress on that. A couple of interesting stats that I don't have committed to memory. I was looking at a slide yesterday from our great I-25 team. So this is segment 6, 7, and 8. In 2022, we spent almost $200 million. We completed 13 bridges, and then these are kind of fun. We laid 304,799 square yards of concrete paving. We put in 2,064,634 pounds of rebar and laid 28,103 feet of drainage pipe. And those are just a couple of those interesting stats that all the work that our team has done and our construction partners have done on I-25 in 2022 has been great. So I'll leave it at that. I think we're making great progress, and we hope to continue it.
Thank you. Thank you. So I've known Herman quite a while, but I've known Tom Norton longer than I've known Herman, and I have never heard anyone refer to Tom Norton as a softie. Just as a show of hands, has anybody heard of Tom Norton as a softie? I've never heard that before. But, I love the guy, and he's got a lot of great comments, and he'll make sure that you know what they are. Anyways, so I've been involved with I-25 actually since about 1994, when worked really diligently to make sure that I-25, the segment from State Highway 7 up to Longmont, State Highway 66 in that area, that it was included in the 7th POT projects. In fact, very actively involved in the 7th POT projects. So I'm pretty well aware of what's going on with I-25, and there has been great progress that has been made over the course of the last 10 years, because it was in 2013 that we started the I-25 Coalition. And that was a coalition of government entities, including Adams County, the city and county of Broomfield, Weld County, Larimer County, and a lot of the communities that were all along the I-25 corridor. In fact, I can tell you the day that we started the I-25 Coalition, it was when the flooding started. And it was September 11th, 2013. And on September 13th, 2013, which was a Friday, so Friday the 13th, is when the floods really hit, and every major north-south road, including I-25, Highway 85, every major north-south road was closed. So we knew what our future was going to look like. For the next 6-8 weeks, we knew how bad I-25 was going to get. We already knew it wasn't good. We knew how bad it was going to get. So we created the I-25 Coalition, partially because at the time that executive director, and I don't even know how many executive directors I've been through working with, but it's been quite a few. That executive director told us we wouldn't get any improvements on I-25 North unless we agreed to tolling express lanes on an already built general purpose lane. That's when we told him to go jump in the lake. And we created our coalition. And since that time, we've been very successful, and there has been a lot of great progress that has been made on I-25. But it's not completed. We're not done until we get the true vision, the whole project completed from essentially Wellington, so State Highway 1, all the way down through to State Highway 36. We're not done. We need the whole project completed so that we have a complete, reliable transit system that will work, that will help improve air quality in the area as well, but also improve our drivability and reliability on what is essentially Colorado's Main Street. So we've been working on it for a long time. And while there has been great progress, the whole thing is not committed to funding. And even though that segment 5 has been put into the 10-year plan, it was always in the 10-year plan, at least when I was there. So I don't know, I'm gonna have to go talk to Commissioner Scott James and find out what the hell happened if it just now got put back into the plan. But it's always been part of the plan that it would get improved. In fact, segment 5 was bid out with segment 6, and it has FHWA approval. So about a month ago, I attended the CTIO, Colorado Transportation Investment Office, thank you. It used to be the HTPE, or HPTE. CDOT loves its acronyms. One time I gave a speech all in acronyms. But anyways, I attended that, and I'm greatly concerned about kind of what appears to be some delays with regard to capacity improvements on segment 5, which is a safety problem. Because in 2013, when we were talking about making improvements to I-25, and the then executive director, Shaylin, told us that we weren't going to get anything if we didn't put toll lanes on general purpose lanes that were already in place, we were told that segment 5, had about a 10-year life to it. 2013, 2023 is a couple weeks away. It needs to be fixed. It's a safety problem. It's that area of I-25, for those of you who don't know who segment 5 is and you're trying to think in your mind, God, where's State Highway 56 and where's State Highway 66? It's that segment that goes down to 2 lanes. It's a safety issue. I-25 has always had safety issues. That's why the Upper Front Range, the North Front Range, even the Eastern TPR, and Dr. Cog all agreed to put major portions of our funding that was supposed to go into these other regions on I-25. Because again, it's Main Street, Colorado. So at this point, it's my understanding that even though Segment 5 was bid out and has approvals from FHWA, that we're going to go do further redesign and further bidding out of the project, which will delay it. So even though it's in the 10-year plan, that doesn't mean it's going to be done in the next 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. It means it's going to get pushed out. Same with Segment 2. My understanding is that CDOT won't approve the NEPA, the environmental clearances. And they're not looking to, with the CTIO, which is supposed to be an enterprise that's supposed to, their main goal is to find funding to help get these projects completed. That's what this enterprise was created for. That they're all not signing off on things because CDOT won't sign off on things. So there's a lot of questions that are going on about really when are we going to get it done? Because segments 3 and 4, my understanding is they're not even in the plan. It's an entire corridor. You need the entire corridor to make it work, to make it safe, reliable, and sustainable. And we're not there yet. And I'm greatly concerned, as you all should be here, that the projects appear to be getting pushed out in the plan. I started as a county commissioner in 1993. That's when we changed from the Department of Highways to the Department of Transportation and created the State Transportation Advisory Committee. That's when we started pushing to get additional capacity built on I-25, 1993. We were able to get portions of I-25 in as a 7th pot project. Otherwise, there are projects that have been on the list for 30 years that aren't getting funded. So when we talk about I-25 being delayed, Segment 5, it's a safety project. Segment 2, that's called the crash corridor. It's down between about 84th and 104th. Lots of accidents occur there. What the heck are we doing that we aren't looking at and improving safety projects on Main Street, Colorado? What are we doing that we're not ensuring that we have reliable transit service all the way through, that they can use an express lane all the way through? That would greatly help with air quality. So those are concerns that I have, and those were some of the questions that I was asking at the Joint Budget Committee the other day. Go ahead, Herman. Jump in, Herman.
We jump in.
You know,
I had no idea this was going to come up.
I'm just going to have lots of fun.
This is
Really,
great.
I'm sure
It's
I
like
was texting you.
it's like we're at a stack meeting.
I haven't been in one of those for
Yeah,
a while.
I don't.
Lots of
It's-
questions, though. I've read some of the minutes lately.
Is that, yeah. So just to provide a little clarity on Segment 5, because I appreciate what the senator said, and by the way, I'm really happy she's on Joint Budget Committee, and you guys should be too. No, hey, we may not always agree, but she cares about transportation, and that's the first thing. After that, the rest is just friendly discussion. So the Transportation Commission does have a meeting this afternoon, and we're going to talk about North I-25 with them. I want to make sure that, yes, segments, when we bid out Segment 5 and 6, we said we've got Segment 6. If there's money for Segment 5, we've got the contract. It's built right in. We can keep right on going. That was 5 years ago. Since then, we've been through some, and that's an alternative delivery project. So it's not a design bid build, but it's a construction management general contractors, CMGC. It's the way we're delivering that project in Segment 6. We've had some audits related to alternative delivery. We've had some questions about transparency and accountability on alternative delivery projects. In 2021, the legislature passed a bill that Senate Bill 260 that had some requirements for alternative delivery contracts that said if you want to do this kind of contract, you need to visit with the public, you need to visit with the contractors, you need to go through the Transportation Commission and get approval from them to do an alternative delivery contract. True, segment 5 and 6 happened before Senate Bill 260 passed in 2021, so it doesn't really apply. But from a transparency and accountability standpoint, most of our Transportation Commission weren't commissioners 5 years ago. The things that they've received from CDOT staff on alternative delivery projects have been requests for permission to do an alternative delivery project in the state. So we think that from a transparency and accountability standpoint, we want to go to the Transportation Commission, which we will do this afternoon and you all can tune in, and say, we have a contract, it happened 5 years ago, it was before Senate Bill 260, we don't have to ask for your approval to do this alternative delivery contract, but from a transparency and accountability standpoint, we want to make sure that you have approved us to do that. The commission will have two choices. They can say, no, it's a different project now, that was 5 years ago. Start over, determine whether you want to do an alternative delivery project, and then come back to us for an approval. And if we do that, it will cause some project delays. Or they can say, you're good to go, appreciate the transparency and accountability, you already have a contract, go forth and prosper. And CDOT has made sure that we did that in a transparent and accountable way. And by doing it this month, there will be no delays if they make that decision to move forward with what we already have in place. There will be no delays for segment 5. I suspect that's probably the decision that they make, but they're the Transportation Commission, not us. I think it's just important that we be transparent and accountable to the public and to the commission.
Thank you both for your insights so far. Unfortunately, we are super tight on time, but I do have one more question and a comment before we wrap up. And so, first of all, we are thrilled to have Senator Kirkmeyer be serving on the Joint Budget Committee that does serve Northern Colorado incredibly well. So congratulations. At the same time, as we talk about projects of this size, it's all about the money. And over the last year, we've been talking about public-private partnerships. We've been talking about, does Senate Bill 260 actually create funding pathways or not? At the end of the day, we'd love to have both of you share your perspectives on how do we fund these projects and get them built? Any insights you might have or thoughts that you might have in that space?
Yeah, and we're doing it now. So Senate Bill 260 does provide some funding that helps. We have the benefit that this is a managed lane corridor, so we have the toll revenue, and we've already been collecting toll revenue. So we have a sense of whether that's a robust funding source, and it is. So we think that with the dollars that we have in the 10-year plan and with the toll revenue, we'll be able to fund segment 5, we'll be able to fund segment 2 once we complete the environmental on that and get that going. And we think that even after that, once those are underway, we recognize there's a lot of folks that want to see segment 4. I think there's a 3B out there. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. I'm confident that with the toll revenue, if it continues to be as robust as it looks like it is, we'll be able to get those projects done.
So Senate Bill 260 created enterprises. One of those is they renamed the HPTE to the CTIO, which is the Colorado Transportation Investment Office. They're supposed to be somewhat independent. The thing about enterprises is they are offline from the budget. So it's very hard for us to get a lot of information with regard, well, not a lot of information, but it's not all that transparent with regard to enterprises and the Joint Budget Committee and what we see at the Joint Budget Committee. So one of the things that I'm doing at the Joint Budget Committee is asking for accountability of all the enterprises that were created. Because I think there were 4 or 5 created in 260. One of them is over in the governor's energy office. which I'm wondering what the heck they're doing. In fact, I asked a bunch of questions about that one yesterday. So we need to get more information about these. But the CTIO, which again used to be the HPTE, their main thrust is supposed to be finding alternative financing and finding financing to get these projects done. So 5 years ago or so, or somewhere in that time frame, when I was still on the Board of County Commissioners, and we were having this discussion, and actually maybe it was only about 3 years ago, we were having this discussion with regard to funding of I-25, it's when it all got switched and we were going to a TIFIA loan. So instead of just straight up funding from CDOT and going through the 10-year plan development, going through all that planning process, everything that we had gone through to ensure that this project was part of the 10-year plan, all the agreements between the 4 transportation planning regions that are in Region 4, when we had all that in place, suddenly during COVID, we shifted to, we had to have equity around the state because somehow our transportation process wasn't working, apparently, for CDOT. So we went to, we have to have equity around the state, which means there started to be a shift in the projects that were getting funded and a shift in the 10-year plan. And it was a very kind of silent shift, but it was occurring nonetheless. And at that point is when it was said, look, we're going to go after a TIFIA loan. And I was guaranteed by the director, now director, executive director of CDOT, that it would not impact the funding, that it would not impact the schedule for I-25 North. Now here we are in 2022, almost 2023. We have an enterprise that was set up to help find funding. Yet it doesn't appear, at least from the meeting that I was at about a month ago, that they are going to utilize the enterprise or the P3 process to fund I-25 North, Segment 5's Segment 2. So they are going to effectively delay the project. They are going to delay Segment 5. And for those of you who don't know, our now executive director of the Department of Transportation used to work for the federal government. And guess where she used to work? In the financing side of things. So she knows exactly that if you hold up on the funding and start delaying, and even with that TIFIA loan, start thinking about what interest rates start doing over the course of the next 3 to 4 years as you've delayed a project. So essentially what is happening behind the scenes is there is a delay that's going on with capacity improvement projects. One of the questions that was sent to me that I should be prepared to answer today is, what's going on with funding for transportation at the state? Nothing. No one is talking about funding transportation. No one. Senate Bill 260, they talked about all the additional funding in there. It wasn't to build capacity. The funding that they included in 260 was funding that was already partially included with the 10-year plan. It was already funding that we knew we had. Nice scam. So what's going on is I-25 is getting delayed. You heard him say if the Transportation Commission approves today. It's a very political body. They're all concerned whether or not they get reappointed by the governor. If you've looked at the appointments over the last 4 years, we've gone from people who actually understand transportation, who are supportive of transportation, who understand that highways are not a mode, that they are the infrastructure that's necessary for several modes, to people who are environmentalists and don't have any clue about transportation. So there's a political agenda that's been occurring for the last 4 years, and it's to slowly move away from capacity building on our highways. That's what's going on. So no one's talking about transportation funding or additional funding. That's not what's going on. Even though there's about a 7 to 8% increase in general fund revenues to go towards a budget, a 7% increase in our budget for the state of Colorado when we have 8.3% increase in inflation. So you all need to get on board. You need to figure out really what is happening here. You've got a lot of experts in this region. Former executive director of CDOT sitting in the audience. Former executive deputy director sitting in the audience. There are a lot of people who have been working on I-25 for not just 7 years, for several years, for decades. And at this point, I-25, instead of being funded like it was, and instead of getting completed like it was and on schedule, we're looking at how are we going to delay this project, because that's what's happening behind the scenes. Don't think for a minute that transportation isn't extremely political. There was a greenhouse gas roadmap. There's all sorts of other things that are going on behind the scenes. There's a relationship between, which I'm going to find out about, there's a relationship that's been existing between the Department of Transportation and these enterprises that I don't think is consistent with the statute or why these enterprises were formed, unless the sole purpose of an enterprise was to take everything offline off the budget and make sure that they aren't transparent and aren't accountable. Because the director of the enterprise shouldn't be concerned that the executive director of the Department of Transportation can fire him. That's not how it's supposed to work. They have an independent board. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and the bottom line is I-25 North Segment 5 is probably going to get delayed.
I wish we had another 6 hours. I know our labor
I
labor
hope to God
panel
I'm
talked
wrong.
about a full day. Our water panel talked about a full week. As you can see, an important issue with lots of moving parts and pieces. Know that NCLA, the Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance, is continuing to be highly involved in transportation conversations, advocating for solutions, and being your advocate every day that we can around this roadway and others that impact Northern Colorado. So join me in thanking Herman. Join me in thanking the Senator. I'm going to hand the mic over to David to do just some quick closing.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for bearing with us in a little bit of cold room here. Might be a calm, cloudy day, so maybe the wind and the solar aren't really kicking in yet. But it was a great day. We appreciate your participation. It's time to wrap things up. We did want to take a moment on a more somber note to take some time to recognize the passing of Hugh McKeon. And to celebrate his life a little bit, Hugh was a statesman. He was a model leader, an advocate to the NCLA, and he will be sorely missed. And I'm sure those of you that knew Hugh would echo this. So we lift our thoughts and our prayers up to Hugh's family. Before we wrap up the event, I'd also like to, again, recognize our sponsors. First of all, the Loveland, Greeley, and Fort Collins Chambers of Commerce, along with Upstate Colorado. It's a great alliance that really pulls all these things together. And then for our sponsors again, Elevations Credit Union is our gold sponsor. BizWest and Ent Credit Union and UC Health is our silver sponsors. And then our bronze sponsors in Woodward, iHeartMedia, and then moving on to Canvas Credit Union, Jet Marketing, North 40 News, Northern Engineering, Office Spaces, and Sinorama. So again, thank you for our sponsors, and thank you also to all of our speakers and panelists today. Applause for them. And one last note is all the material here will be available on all the Chambers websites as well as the NCLA website if you'd like to log on and get some of that material. So thank you for being here today, folks. Drive safe.